the Educational Physics Podcast.
Hello, my name is João Figueiredo and welcome to episode number 6 of the Educational Physics Podcast. Today, my guest is an absolute legend. The global drumming ambassador himself, Mr. Dom Famularo. This conversation was about Dom's mission, Dom's legacy, Dom's musical upbringing, where his passion for education came from, and how we can push education to the next level. I had the greatest of pleasures to spend 1 hour talking to Dom Famularo about the thing that I love the most: teaching. So with no further ado, here's Dom Famularo. But thank you for saying yes. I really look forward to, hearing your thoughts on all things education. But for those two people who don't know who you are, if you want to tell them what they should know about Dom Famularo, the floor is yours.
Boy, Joe, thank you so much. Well, first of all, I am a drummer who's been playing professionally for 52 years. And I started playing professionally at the age of 12. I started playing drums at about the age of 11. And I have continued playing drums and living my passion every single day of my life. So this is, to me, an extremely important part of the process of, individual happiness. And I live on Long Island, which is about a 1-hour drive out of New York City. And growing up here on Long Island, I was close enough to New York City to go there and hear many of the great players. So I had the chance at a very young age to meet all of the great legends, from Buddy Rich to Louis Bellson to Elvin Jones to Max Roach to Papa Joe Jones to Philly Joe Jones to Art Blakey to Mel Lewis to, Tony Williams, all the great, great drummers that performed here in New York, Steve Gadd. I met them at a young age and asked many questions, and I began to take lessons with many of them, and of course, Joe Morello and Jim Chapin. And these drummers that I met at a young age, all of them had an extremely positive attitude about them loving what they did. They loved drums. They just lived it every day. They learned it every day. And I saw that positive happiness, and I said, I want that. And that became a very clear journey of me following my passion to play drums. I teach here at my studio. I have over 2,500 students that travel to me from over 40 countries. Out of those 2,500 students, about 80% of them are teachers, and 30% of those lessons I do on Skype, and from all around the world. So I've got my teaching practice. I started a publishing company with some of the ideas that I had for writing drum books. My partner is Joe Bergamini, who is a top player in the New York area, many of the Broadway shows. And we have 14 drum books that we've written and published, and Alfred Music distributes them around the world in their physical books, and HudsonMusic.com sells the books digitally. So we have the books offered in many different formats, and we keep writing books and putting them out and trying to inspire drummers around the world. And I'm endorsed with Mapex drums, Sabian cymbals, Evans drum heads, and ProMark sticks. And these companies support me. They have great dedication to education, so that allows me to travel about 15 to 20 countries a year, performing festivals and clinics and performances and teaching, and it's unbelievable. And last year I traveled 220,000 miles, which is about 9 times around the earth. But Joe, that's a little bit about me.
That's insane.
But really is.
It really is. And I'm going to ask you further into our conversation a question on how you, not stay motivated, because that I can understand, but stay energized. But we can talk about that later. Now I would like to unpack your backstory, because I'm very curious to know how you met and what the experience of learning from Joe Morello was.
Absolutely. Joe Morello, these are You know, I hear many young kids use the term legends.
Mm-hmm.
This person's a legend. This guy's a legend. This woman's a legend. And to me, that word has to be used very carefully because for me, a person that achieves legendary status is a person that has committed themselves to something that they have been so influential in inspiring people in their life. That to me is what makes a legend. And this legend also has to be very unique and special in their craft. Well, Joe Morello for sure fits into that category. And there was a teacher of mine here on Long Island by the name of Al Miller. He died about 18 years ago in the year 2000. And he was just a beautiful guy, and he was a teacher here on Long Island, and all the top drummers in the Long Island area had to go study with Al because he was just the best. Well, little did I know that Al was good friends with Buddy Rich. They were in the Marines together in World War II for a couple of years, and when they got out of the Marines, they became very close friends. They were both drummers, and whenever Buddy Rich would perform in town, he would call up Al and say, Al, I'm going to be performing in the New York area, come on down. And because I had been Al Miller's best student, when Buddy would call Al, Al would then call me and say, come on, we're going to go down and see Buddy. So I met Buddy Rich in 1971, and that began my first eye-opener of seeing a great drummer that close. Well, at this first Buddy Rich show, sitting on the side where I was sitting with my teacher, Al Miller, was Joe Morello. And Morello was sitting there, and here I'm meeting Joe Morello. I had been, watching Joe Morello on television. I had been listening to his albums for many years with the Dave Brubeck Quartet and the song Take 5, the famous solo on that song. He was a legend back in 1971 when I met him. I'm sitting next to him. I'm watching Buddy Rich perform, and we were sitting on the side stage, so we were about maybe 2 meters from Buddy Rich. And we're watching Buddy perform, and Buddy Rich played a drum solo on a snare drum. Joe, this was so incredible that he played the entire solo on his snare drum, only accenting his bass drum on certain hits. He didn't hit any cymbals, no toms, just the snare drum for 20 minutes. And meanwhile, the 2,000 people in the audience are screaming and yelling of the excitement of this solo that's only on the snare drum. And I'm watching this going, what? So he finishes the solo, brings the band back in, says to the people, thank you so much, I'll see you for the second set, and walks off. So I am sitting there, my face is completely flush. I have no more emotion in my face. And I'm sitting, and to the right of me is Joe Morello, and to the left of me is my teacher, Al Miller. Now this is 1971, I'm 18 years old. So I turned to Al Miller and I said, Al, what did this guy just do? What did he just do? I mean, 2,000 people are screaming and yelling. He only played the snare drum. Unbelievable. And Al says, I have no idea. So I turned to Joe Morello. I said, Mr. Morello, what did Buddy just do? This was incredible. And Joe Morello crossed his arms and he looked at me and he said, Buddy played a series of low strokes, half strokes, and full strokes, using the free stroke and molar, playing pullouts and control strokes. So I hear that, so I immediately start laughing, Joe. I'm laughing hysterically. I said, wow, I said, Mr. Morello, that sounds so funny. And Joe said to me, what are you laughing about? I said, well, what you said sounded so academic. He said, well, that's what he did. So now the New York in me, Joe, came out. I said, okay, wait a second. That's what he did. All right, explain it again, but a little slower. I want to hear this. So Joe said he played a series of low strokes, half strokes, and full strokes, which are ghost notes, medium strokes, and accents, using the free stroke, which is the George Lawrence Stone rebound stroke, using molar, which is the arm and whip motion, playing pullouts and control strokes. A pullout is when you play two notes, a soft note and an accent, and a control stroke is the opposite when you play an accent and a soft note. So when Joe said this and explained it, I said, holy jeez, that's what he did? He said, absolutely. So I said to Al Miller, I said, boy, that was amazing. So Al said to me, he said, Dom, you've been with me now a few years. Maybe it's time to start taking some lessons with Joe Morello. So I turned to Mr. Morello. I said, Mr. Morello, is it possible? Can I study with you? He said, yes. So he gave me the number of the music store he was teaching at. I put it in my wallet. We watched the second set of Buddy Rich. I went home that night. The next morning, I called up the music store. I made a lesson with Joe Morello. It was just within a few days. I go in there. I sit down with Joe, and Joe says, what do you want to learn? And I said, Mr. Morello, I want to learn all that stuff you said at the Buddy Rich show. All those things that you said, I want to learn this. He goes, okay, let's begin. And that became my journey with Morello, and I studied with Joe for about 8 years.
Wow.
Absolutely amazing. Every lesson was amazing. And then about 3 or 4 years into those lessons, he said, listen, now it's time while you're studying with me that you might want to also start studying with Jim Chapin. So that opened up a whole nother degree of now going to Jim Chapin. So here I was learning the free stroke, which is this rebound stroke taught by George Lawrence Stone to Morello. Morello became George Lawrence Stone's best student. And George Lawrence Stone taught everybody. Buddy Rich, Gene Krupa, Papa Joe Jones, Max Roach, everybody. So here it is now. I'm studying with Morello, learning the free stroke from his teacher, George Lawrence Stone. Then I go to Jim Chapin, and now Jim Chapin, who was the best student of Sanford Moeller, now I'm learning this concept of this arm whipping motion from Chapin. So it was just a great combination of brilliant men that I had a chance to meet with.
No, that's fascinating. And it's funny because my next point was exactly Jim Chapin, and because I know that those two were, influential in your musical upbringing.
They really were. And what's amazing about it is that at that point then, about 1976, I went out to California for a year. And while I was in California, I went there because I knew that I wanted to learn the techniques of George Lawrence Stone. So I studied with his best student, Morello. I wanted to learn the techniques of Moeller. So I studied with his best student, Jim Chapin. And I had heard that the best student of Billy Gladstone, Billy Gladstone, was another phenomenal teacher. His best student, one of his best students, was Shelly Manne. So Shelly Manne lived in California. So I moved to California with my band so I can take lessons with Shelly Manne. This opened mind up tremendously. The three greatest teachers in the early 1900s were Billy Gladstone, George Lawrence Stone, and Sanford Moeller. So they all died in the mid-1960s. So 1971, I was 18 years old. By the time I realized I wanted to study with them, they had all passed away. So my next question was, who were their best students? Joe, that's where I went.
Makes sense. I mean, I've at a smaller scale, I've pursued the same kind of objective. I took lessons from someone that you know very well, Klaus Hassler, for the exact same reason. I wanted to know what Chapin knew and what Moeller knew, and so on and so on. That's the logical next step. Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. And Klaus, who is a very special person, a very special teacher, a very special player, an absolutely brilliant mind in the drumming community, who I've had the chance to meet up with about 25, 27 years ago when he came to study with me. And I just noticed he had such a great talent at that age. And he had an incredible open mind and a strong desire to learn. And Klaus just really took in these techniques and took it to the next level and really opened up a whole nother mindset of performance now and teaching, which is so magical. And I just love, when I have my times to be with Klaus, which is pretty often. We get a chance to get together, and it's always a fun, exciting time.
Klaus is really someone that changed the way I think. We met, let me think. So we met for the first time in 2010, and then we had the chance. I invited him to come to England to do a masterclass here at the Leeds Music Academy, and that was the first time we really, socialized. We spent some quality time together, had dinner, and I was fascinated by how easy it was for him to just talk about everything. He's one of those minds that is all inclusive and all accepting, and he'll talk about politics and then history and then rudiments and then sports. I became more curious as well.
Absolutely.
And I started studying other things to help my understanding of education and then learning and teaching and all these things that obviously excite me on a daily basis.
Well, understand too what you said in the beginning, which is very important, and this is how I've been teaching all of my life. Before you can teach the student, you must open their mind and help them to think differently. If a student comes to me and wants me just to give them information, and they want to continue thinking the way they think, that information is not going to help them out to the best ability. It has to be a desire to want to open your mind so you can think differently than how you think, so you can then open up your mind to totally step into a world of freedom of expression, which is what this is all about.
I agree. And I'm going to ask what your thoughts are on when it comes to doing that and going through that process. But even before I ask that, I would like to know because I'm curious about that. Where did the passion for teaching come from? Was it directly related to your passion for learning, or was it something that came later?
Joe, good question. I have to first start with my parents, because my parents, my mother was always a very curious person, and she was just a great mother. The way she taught us, she taught us by example, and she had such great enthusiasm every day. So that's what I grew up seeing. My father was an engineer, and he repaired automobiles and fire trucks. He was a fireman. He was involved with the community, many different things. And he was also a person that constantly wanted to learn. And right up until his death, he was learning and reading new ideas and new books and new machines. And so I think that's the first thing that I saw that around my household. The other part of it is that music, I come from an Italian family, and we played music all the time in our household. And I have two older brothers and a younger sister, and we began to put a band together. My older brother played bass guitar. My next brother played guitar. I played drums, and my younger sister played some piano and sang. So we had this band, and in an Italian household, every Sunday, all the relatives would come to our house. We had the band set up in the house, and when the people came over, our job was to play music for everybody when they came over. So here I am at 12 years old performing and playing with our band, and then eventually people started to hire us, and now I'm working professionally. So the excitement of playing music for my family, the excitement of playing music for other people became a part of this fun. I said, man, this is so cool. Can you imagine I'm playing music? People are happy. They're sitting listening. They're dancing. They're smiling. And then at the end of the performance, they would give us money. Joe, this was like, I said, oh man, this is cool. What could this be like if I could do this for the rest of my life? So the performance part became passionate. And then when I was 17 years old, I was performing, and many drummers would come to my show and hear me play, and they would ask me questions about what I was doing on the drums. How do you get your left hand to work that way? What books have you been through? So I started teaching at the age of 17, and when I began to teach, I kind of felt the same enjoyment that as I watched these students learn and grow, and I was giving them information. This was really exciting, and the passion is right there in front of us when you stop thinking about yourself and start thinking about others. And that to me is where my passion is fueled. When I continue to work for other people and help them out, what comes back is pure energy.
That's there's a lot there for me to unpack in my own time, because I couldn't agree more. And at the same time, it's one of those things that you need to hear being said, so you reinforce that in your mind. Because one of the things that I personally perhaps have a discomfort about is when it comes to the state of education these days. And, I talk about this all the time, maybe too much, but I feel that often teachers, especially nowadays, I guess they teach themselves more than they teach the students, and they teach their past selves, and they teach the way they learned, and they're not very concerned about how that student learns. And I was a victim of that as a student. I had a teacher that he wasn't very interested in understanding how I learned. He was teaching me the way he got things, and if I couldn't understand them, then that was my problem. So as I became slowly but surely more and more passionate about education, I realized that that's wrong. A real teacher doesn't do that. And to also give some context, my family, much like yours, is a big influence to me and in my upbringing and how I think these days, because both my parents are teachers. So there's that. Although my mom, she was a science teacher, and my dad, he's an architect, so he taught all sorts of different artistic related disciplines. But I saw these two people, and also my grandparents, always being very focused on the process of teaching. Not so much even the content anymore. They had mastered that, and they were constantly fine-tuning the teaching. And that for me was something that, as a student, was very insightful, because I know that most students don't see that work being done. They go to the class or a lesson or whatever they are taught, and that's that. They go home and they do the work or not. But I could see both sides, right? I was learning, but I was also seeing these people doing the behind the scenes work, the teachers in this case, and I could see their focus being on the student all the time. So when I felt myself in this situation where I could see that teacher, in this case a drum teacher, wasn't really focused on me, that was very disheartening, and it was kind of scary. Like, is this how people teach drums? And then fortunately I had other teachers later on that proved me wrong, and there are people teaching drums properly. But one of those people was actually you, because I saw you at a clinic, and I can't remember the year, but this was in a little town near Lisbon, maybe in 2007, and I'm just guessing now. But I saw you doing this clinic, and I saw someone with an energy that I had never seen before, and it was just again another one of those moments, right? An epiphany moment that you can teach with positivity. It doesn't have to be about either you get it or you're dumb. And so I wanted to, share that with you, because you and Klaus, which is interesting, and almost, it's interesting because it's the same lineage almost. It's the same, there's some sort of common thread here that is interesting to me. But one thing that I wanted to ask you, because I know you have thoughts about this and you can expand on this, which is, what do you think is the importance of laughter in the teaching process?
Well, let's take it a step further. I mean, it's what's the importance of laughter in life? I mean, my gosh, this starts here. This has to be, laughter is, first of all, laughter is what will relax people. So if you're relaxed, the learning process becomes easier. But I mean, life is too short, Joe, for me to listen. There are negative things that happen in this world. I choose to ignore some of them. I choose to not worry about many of them. And I choose to realize that I only own this moment. My next book that I'm working on, and my first book I wrote was called The Cycle of Self-Empowerment. The next book I'm working on now is called Owning Now. It's about possessing the moment. We only own now. We don't own tomorrow. We don't even own later. So to me, it's a matter of owning now. So to own now, I want to make each moment the best, and laughter is an absolutely important part of the process of being able to be human. Listen, there's love, there's laughter, there's compassion, there's respect. All these are words that are so powerful, and laughter is a very important part of the process of success for personal happiness. If there's personal happiness, then there can be success anywhere in your life.
Interesting. No, I agree with you, and that's something that I'm trying to, incorporate into my teaching more and more. That kind of self-awareness, relaxation, like understanding oneself. I find that, and I see this through my students as well, which is very helpful for me as a person. Because I find that once we are aware of ourselves and where we are, everything relaxes. The shoulders drop, the eyebrows relax, and you can really see like people becoming more accepting of themselves, which is what I think so many of us can't really do. So owning the now is a great message, and I spoke about that recently publicly, because I believe in that as well, and I refer to it as the idea of the ripple effect, right? Your future is nothing but the ripple effect of what you do now. You can't do much about it if you don't focus on what you're doing right now in the moment, and how you are, what your state is, what the value that you bring to the world is, and really so many people out there, and this is going to be perhaps a good segue for me to ask the next question, because I might be wrong, but I see a lot of people, I'm going to be careful with my words now, but maybe misleading some students, and especially in the online community. And I've been talking about this a little bit with other podcast guests, and it seems to be the common thread as well, that most teachers see that as a concern, how there are so many people out there, quote unquote, teaching, and it might be providing a disservice rather than a service. So I would like to hear your thoughts on the state of education nowadays. It can be online, but feel free to extrapolate as much as you want.
Well, Joe, I think, listen, in any field, there are going to be good and there's going to be bad. In any field. I don't care if it's the computer business, the real estate business, the construction business, the engineering business. There's going to be people that are going to be, not as driven, and they're going to always try and take the path of least resistance. I never took the path of least resistance. I mean, to me, anytime I come up to a decision and there's a fork in the road, there's one fork that goes to the path of least resistance, and there's one fork that goes to the path of most resistance. I always choose the path of most resistance, because the path of most resistance is where you're going to learn the most. That's where the most growth is. Now, if a teacher doesn't have that view and they teach and they're not as skilled a teacher, that doesn't bother me as much, Joe, because if they're bringing happiness to a student, even though it might not be the greatest guidance that student has, if that student finds happiness with that teacher, that's great. I can't begin to worry about what everyone else is doing. I really have to take ownership of what I'm doing. So there's always going to be good, and there are going to be teachers out there that are not as good as me, and there are going to be teachers out there that are much better than me. So my job really is to understand how I can learn to be the best Dom Famularo I can be, and understand that my journey in life is to try and bring as much happiness and joy to people in my craft, in the art of modern drum set playing. And I'm going to try that, and I'm going to try and do that until the day I die. So I have to commit to learning. I've got to commit to being compassionate. There's a word that's very, very not used as much, compassion. Compassion means to feel what other people feel. That means I have to be really aware of someone else's feelings and how they're feeling so I can reach them better. So to me, a teacher has to be compassionate to understand where that student's coming from. And many years ago, a teacher could teach the same lesson to every student. And they could teach the same lesson to every single student. Well, now it's a different way of learning because there's so much information on the internet. There are so many teachers in the area. There's so much going on that, to me, I have to teach each student, and it's got to be individually designed. What does that student need? What does that student want? What do I feel that student, should be working on? And also the workings of how much time do they have to practice? What styles are they looking to learn? Who are some of their favorite drummers that they want to play like, or at least be in the in the style like? There's a lot of questions I have to get to know so I can design a program for that student specifically to reach what they want to reach. It's not for me to tell them what they want to reach. It's for me to ask them, where do you want to be with this art form? And how can I help you enjoy music more? That's my job as an educator. This is, and I have to be informed of all the different techniques that are out there. I've got to be informed of all the different books that are out there. I've got to be informed of what's happening on the internet. And I see, I see a lot of, teachers that are on the internet that are not teaching information the way I learned it. So someone, for example, like the molar technique, I see some people teaching molar, which as they're teaching it, it's not the molar that I learned. So if I say that person's bad, then that judgment, I think, is very poor on my part. Even though that person might not have learned molar the right way, if they can bring joy to another person with the technique that they're teaching, and that other person finds happiness and joy in that knowledge, then it works. So I try to remove judgment every day of my life. Joe, this to me is one of the hardest things to do. Just because someone doesn't think like me, just because someone doesn't teach like me, just because someone doesn't act or deliver ideas like me, does not mean anything. Everyone's different, and I have to learn to accept the diversity of how people teach, act, perform, and who they are as people.
Yes, absolutely.
This is one of the hardest things to do.
It is. It really is. And, I find myself often, and I hope that I'm getting better at it, but I find myself often upset by, some of those lessons that I see online. And I get emotional because I'm very passionate about teaching right and teaching efficiently. But one rule that I have is that I never engage. So in other words, I might get emotional, but I keep it inside. And, it's like, I don't know if it's truth or legend, but they say that Abraham Lincoln used to write these very angry letters and then not send them. And I do the same thing, right? I write these angry letters in my mind and then don't send them. But because like yourself, right? There's no point, and I agree with you, in judging people for their, lack of skill or whatever it might, or just difference. I definitely agree with that. And especially, being now an established immigrant, I know how difficult it is to not be bothered by the fact that some people do look at difference with, not so fond eyes. And so it takes sometimes feeling it to then changing yourself from within and then become a better person. But I guess my next question is still relates to the previous one, which is, what do you think of online education, period? What do you think the pros and the cons are? What are your thoughts on where this is going?
Well, I think, Joe, I think the online education is excellent. I mean, think about online education at universities, that you can learn online from a professor from a different university in a different country. And you can, from your computer, you can learn, and people learn great things online. It works all the way. I mean, I teach 30% of my students are online teaching, live lessons that are online, and these students grow and learn and play great and are happy, and it works. There's a lot of free information on the internet, and drummers go there, and if they learn and they find happiness from those lessons, fantastic. There's a lot of misinformation out there. So if somebody's more serious about learning, they have to seek out someone who has better credentials so they can get information delivered to them in a better, healthier way. And so I think the online education is great. There are many people that are teaching online that have online schools. that are doing fantastic. I know Dave Weckl recently opened up an online school, DaveWeckl.com, and I had been at Dave's school and helped him with some of the first ideas about technique and stuff, and it was great to be with Dave. Dave has got hundreds of students now that are learning from the videos that Dave posts on there. So, Dave probably doesn't have the time to teach privately, so he puts this online school together, and people learn from it. And many of my students have joined the Dave Weckl online school program, and they love it. They're getting great ideas, they feel happiness, and they feel they have a connection with Dave Weckl, and it's just fantastic to see that happen. So where that wasn't available before, it's available now, so it's positive. So I think the online concept is fantastic. I think we have to go back to the individual teacher, that they have to continue to grow and improve themselves to make their product better, to attract more students. It is the quality of the product, not only on the information they have, but also the important thing is the understanding of how you're delivering this. What's the intent behind delivering this information? That's a very big part of it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think the online education world is just fantastic when it comes to the access, like you said, right? It's just, for me, I'll speak for myself. I told you earlier that I took lessons from Klaus. Well, only two of the lessons that I took with him were live. All the other lessons were via Skype for obvious reasons, right? I'm based in England, Klaus is in Germany.
Absolutely.
10 years ago, that wouldn't be possible, which would mean that I wouldn't be able to learn from someone at the, level of Klaus Hassler. And now I've done that with multiple other teachers, again, via Skype. I guess my only concern is when it comes to the one teacher for the masses, that we might lose the mentorship aspect of teaching, which can be fixed, or not fixed, but I guess the better word would be it can be compensated by still pushing out the importance of one-on-one tuition, even if via Skype. But that's my only concern, that I've seen a lot of students feeling more attracted towards learning just via YouTube, for instance, right? And then the student can't really filter, and it's no fault to the student, but can't really filter what's useful, what's not, what's just flashy, but has no importance to their learning. That's my only concern, right? Because it is what it is. I understand that, once you open the gates, a lot will come through, but that's really that the lack of, I guess, the better term would be adaptability, right? Like, because everything is a one size fits all, and some people kind of end up missing out on actually learning an important concept because of its rigidity, right? If it's one video, that's it. That's the only way that topic will be delivered, and there's no chance the teacher will be able to then, tweak as I do and as you do in your private teaching, right? Like you see a student not getting it, you can adapt and somehow find a different route. But besides that, I'm with you. The access is just incredible, and in my opinion, I think the future, and the near future, the next decade maybe, we'll see a massive shift, or maybe a shift even, when it comes to that little missing piece of the lack of interaction and stuff like that. I think that really interesting things will happen really soon that might be very exciting. But including with artificial intelligence and all that stuff that I've been becoming more and more interested in from an educational standpoint, I think that this could be an interesting solution for a problem that I find harmful at times, which is that lack of interaction.
Well, everybody's different on how people learn. So, I mean, some people are very shy, and I think the internet serves a great purpose for certain people. I think it comes down to the individual teacher themselves. If they want to stay active and they want to be a major part of the percussion industry, they have to continue to pay tribute to the mentors. They've got to pay tribute to the great artists before them. They have to be a part of teaching history, explaining the great drummers that came before them and how the lineage of teaching is still alive. We have to explain that in our teaching. That just comes down to the responsibility of each teacher. And I believe if that teacher has the passion and the positive attitude all the time, and the positive attitude has got to be all the time. All the time. I mean, that's how I am naturally and how I am. I wake up in the morning and I choose to be happy every morning. I make a choice. Every person makes a choice. If somebody's negative and unhappy, they're making a choice. I happen to think it's not a good choice. That's just my opinion. But I mean, I had a question in a magazine where the gentleman said, he said, Dom, he said, you're so positive. You know, how is it possible to be positive every day? He said, that's not possible. And I said, well, let me ask you a question. Do you know anybody that's unhappy all the time, that's negative every day? They said, yes, I know many people like that. I said, you know many people who are unhappy and negative every day, but that's accepted. And when someone's positive every day, that's not accepted. That's phony. I said, I didn't understand that. I said, this is about choices. It's a choice you make. If I happen to wake up and make a choice and I want to be positive every day, I have found that works for me because that allows me every day to develop and empower great relationships. And that's what I want in my life because I don't know if I even own tomorrow. And if I don't own tomorrow, I want to make sure every relationship that I have today is positive and powerful and empowering. So to me, it's a matter of how you choose to, what I call, what is your essence of life? I was asked recently in another article, Dom, what's the essence of life for you? And they said, Dom, I know this is a very deep question that might take a long answer, but for you, what's the essence of life? And I said, oh, that's easy. They said, it's easy. Many people that I've asked this question to take pages and pages of answers. I said, no. To me, the essence of life is to matter, to make a difference, Joe, to make a difference. That's all I want to do. I want to matter in my life and make a difference. If I can write a drum book, so when I pass away, that drum book continues on, I've made a difference. If I can help a drummer seek a higher level of expression on their instrument, and I've been a part of opening that door of expression, I have made a difference. If I brought in 3 beautiful boys into this world, they're 19, 21, and 23, that has made a difference. That has opened up a whole other level. They're great kids. I've got a wonderful wife that supports me. She's a beautiful person, and she teaches me every day, and I learn from her. And the more I learn from her, the more my mind is opened up. And that, to me, is quality of life. That's about mattering and making a difference. So I say, it's really that easy. You just have to wake up every morning, look in the mirror, and say, are you going to be happy or sad today? And who are you going to make a difference for? And then go out and do it.
That's it.
That, to me, that's where the journey begins. Totally. It's really very easy. But people sometimes want to make it more complicated.
Mm-hmm.
I always say, just put your big boy pants on, put your big girl pants on, and go out there and make a positive difference.
That's right. It is that easy. And yet, you know what the problem is, Dom? And I'm just being silly now. I don't actually mean what I'm about to say. But the problem is that sad people are called depressed and happy people are called annoying. That's the issue, right? Like, because that's why we struggle so much to accept that someone can choose to be happy, like yourself. And you're absolutely right.
And if that's how people perceive it, I don't agree with that. A person that is negative, just might be going through a bad time, and a person that's positive, annoying. To me, it's really a matter of, how do I want to be perceived? There was a book I read where a guy said, if you were able to witness your funeral and the people that attend your funeral, and you were in the back of the room and nobody could see you, but you could witness what the people were saying about you, and you could hear what they said about you, that would make a big impact on how you would then choose to run your life. Because if you want to have people talk about you in a very honorable, positive way when you die, you have to live that example.
Mm-hmm.
You have to live that example. And if I don't know, what tomorrow will bring, this could very well be my last day and my last interview. So if that happens, I've got to make sure that I am accepting this interview as a positive, healthy message that when somebody hears my voice in the course of this recording, and they're sitting in their home somewhere around this earth, and they hear my voice, and they hear the enthusiasm in my voice, and they hear me being positive, if I can reach them in the depth of their soul, and they can say, I'm going to change who I am, and I'm going to start being more positive. If that can happen from this interview at this moment in the now, then, Joe, our purpose in this discussion has been great.
I couldn't agree more. Legacy. That's one of my, my motivators, and that's my fuel is legacy. I'm trying to, that's why I do these things, right? I'm trying to have the conversations that need to be had because I believe that if it's worth talking about, it's worth listening to. I'm trying to teach people because I enjoy the process of passing information on and seeing these people feeling more and more capable. That for me is one of the most fulfilling things ever. It's seeing people feeling capable, because I know that so many people, especially children, not especially children, but for me especially is more concerning when it comes to children, to see them not feeling capable of achieving things. It's one of the most heartbreaking sights, and that's why I do what I do. So I'm again, like I said, like seeing you maybe 10 years ago now, and seeing that energy on stage. And I told this story recently, I believe, to someone else that you also know quite well, who is Rob Hirons. We were talking about, his experience of getting to know you and to work with you. And then I told him, look, I never, hung out with Dom Famularo, but my one experience was seeing this man loving the moment. He was on that stage and he was just like at home. And I could only dream of one day being able to feel that, and so I'm pursuing that. Thanks to you.
Well, I heard the interview that you had with Rob. I heard your interview that you had with Klaus, and these are people that are extremely dedicated at their craft. Rob is a very, very dedicated, drummer with his studio in Marseille, France. He has got a wonderful book out, Groove Facility, that's doing great changes, making people think about movement inside their groove. Rob has these videos he puts on his online lessons. These are very dedicated artists that are pursuing our craft every day, and this is what moves the drumming industry forward. I travel from country to country, and I meet these phenomenal drummers. I just met this morning on Skype with Nina Parra, who's a phenomenal female drummer in Brazil. Great drummer. She's a phenomenal player and teacher, and she just built a new studio. Also on the call with Stefan Chamberlain, who's another person that is just phenomenal. He's up in Quebec City, Canada. He's got a school there, plus he's got a school in New York City he teaches at. I mean, these are people that are the next generation of great artists and great musicians that understand the depth of what it takes to work hard, what it takes to be dedicated, and what it takes to try to make a difference and to matter. And they're doing it. It's inspiring to see, and I think what you're doing now at Leeds Music Academy is fantastic, that you've got students coming in learning, they're excited, they're pushing their art form, they're opening up avenues of expression, and you're making a difference, Joe. So this is exactly what it's all about, and hopefully I'll be blessed to continue doing it and keep on going. And as my next student that is already arrived, my next student arrived, and he's here now ready for a lesson, and we're going to go in there and have some fun and talk about drumming, and I'm going to find out exactly what's going to reach their soul and get them excited and do it again.
I love it. So I guess I have maybe two more questions for you. One is, what was your click moment? So when did everything kind of fall into place for you, in your mind, that is?
Well, there probably were several different times for several different reasons. When I was younger, when I first heard Buddy Rich play, that clicked to me. That said, "Wow, here's a guy that really understands movement and control over the instrument." You know, when I met, my gosh, when I met Morello, that opened me up to a whole nother level of someone that was just a dedicated teacher. Even though he was a very famous drummer, it was like here was this very famous drummer also having a desire to teach. That was really impressive. Then I met, a guy like Bob Zildjian, who was the president of Sabian Cymbals, and he, said to me, I believe that you have some ideas for education globally, and I want to support you in trying to achieve those dreams. He said, let's put up an education program behind you, and we'll let you get out there globally and inspire these drummers. And I began to do it, and I continue doing it, and he had a vision, and that was a whole nother way where he kind of helped me to understand business part of going out there and being consistent. And there were just so many people that I've met in my life that totally allowed me to further reach my dream. So there are. I think we have to be very open to opportunities that happen in front of us that we might not realize. Fate is speaking. Fate is speaking every moment. Every moment, Joe, fate is speaking. If you go to bed at night and you put your head on your pillow and you say to yourself, I did not hear fate speak today, that's not because fate wasn't speaking. It's because you didn't listen. So to me, that's a very important part of the journey.
Big words. I'm gonna need an hour of meditation to process. For good reason. For good reason. I mean, this is exactly what I was expecting and more, because I know how, like you said, and you're living by those words, how deep into one's soul you can go into. I guess I can ask you, what advice would you give out to someone who wants to start teaching?
Boy, I think, and I give this advice almost every day of my life to all my students. I think the first thing is you have to commit to being a student. You have to continue to learn. You must be taking lessons. You must be challenging yourself. You must continue to learn. The second thing is I have them to read many books, read many psychology books, understand the human mind, and understand that every person has a different journey they want to be a part of. And it is the responsibility of a great teacher to find out what that journey is, and then map out a plan on how you can help them achieve that journey. If you can help them achieve that journey, then you have given them success in what they are looking for in our art form. I think the fact of always being positive is extremely important. Being enthusiastic. Enthusiasm is based off of the old Greek word enthusiasmo, and it means filled with God. So if you're going to teach with enthusiasm, be filled with the feeling that you really want to make a difference and step into this person's life. I think also as a teacher, it is extremely important to be compassionate, to really understand compassion, that compassion is a word that means you have to understand how these people feel. So these are all things that I teach to all of these students of mine, that I tell them it's not just a journey of learning a specific technique and sharing that information on. It's way bigger than that. And if you want to have a long-term relationship at teaching, this is the secret. And I've been teaching since I'm 17. That's 47 years of teaching. 47 years of teaching privately. I have never advertised. I've got more students now than I've ever had before in my life. And I am enjoying it more. And I am blessed by every single student that comes to me, because it is as equally a fun journey for me as I try and make it for them.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's again. Now I need another hour of meditation. So before I ask you the last question, which is a very direct one, and I know that you're going to have something ready because I'm sure you've been asked this before. I would like to thank you for this, for giving me an hour of your day, of your very busy day. And I want to thank you for your insight, for everything that you've done, for inspiring me when I was, probably 19 or 20 years old, and for making me very curious about the Moeller technique, and then for making me very curious about teaching. And you were like, for me, you still are, that kind of the person who gave me permission to pursue teaching. In other words, I always saw myself as a drummer, but I didn't know if teaching was something that I could pursue, full time. Maybe because everyone I knew were kind of teachers on the side and they didn't take it very seriously. And I didn't know how to manage that emotionally even. Like, am I supposed to do that as well? Or can I just be a teacher? And then I got to know your work and how that was the core of your, of your legacy, if you will. So I would like to thank you and ask you, what would you consider a good quote to live by?
A good quote to live by. I believe, Joe, that there are three types of people in this world. There's a person that makes the wave. They create the wave. They create the excitement. They are proactive people. They are wave makers. The second kind of person is the wave rider. The wave rider kind of waits till the wave is made, then they get on. They kind of stand back and watch, and then they get involved. The third kind of person is the person that spends all of their life looking for the beach. They have no idea what's going on. And I believe we have a choice to make as to which one of those we want to be. Mm-hmm. I made my choice very clearly years ago, and I stand by it. I stand by my integrity. I stand by my value system. I stand by my desire to try to make a difference. So I always chose to be a wave maker. Has it been easy? Absolutely not, because I've always taken the path of most resistance. Mm-hmm. So to me, it's a matter of choosing what you want to do, then living your life, living up to that choice. And the people that you meet along the way, if you've made them happier, if you brought some laughter, if you've empowered them, and if you have made a difference, then I believe your purpose on this earth is fantastically achieved. And that, to me, is the journey that I love to enjoy every day.
That's it. I guess that answers the question that I didn't ask, which was, how do you stay energized? How do you avoid burnout? But I think you gave me the answer right there.
Yeah, there's no burnout. I mean, every day you get up and you just do it. I've never burnt out. I continue doing this every single day. I'm 64 years young. At the end of this year, I'll turn 65. And I just think of all the great drummers before me that were much older than me that kept on doing it. And it really comes to a matter of smile and get up and just go do it and make a difference and have fun along the journey.
I love it. Thank you so much, Dom. I really appreciate this. And hopefully I'll have this uploaded next Wednesday.
Good, man, Joe. You do it. Keep me posted. Send me the link and have some fun and be blessed, man. You're doing a great job. You're making a difference. And I look forward at some point when I can get to the UK to come by and see you there.
Absolutely. I look forward to that.
That would be great. Thank you, Joe. Have a great day.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
The Educational Physics Podcast.
If you would like to support this podcast, please consider subscribing to the YouTube channel and also consider the idea of supporting us via our Patreon account, which is patreon.com/Leeds Music Academy. My name is João Figueiredo, and thank you for listening and learn something today. Take care.